He's got one foot in the frying pan and one in the pressure cooker. Believe me, as a bowler, I know that right about now, your bladder feels like an overstuffed vacuum cleaner bag, and your butt is kind of like an about-to-explode bratwurst.
Hey, you mind? I wasn't talking when you were bowling.
Was I talking out loud?
Welcome to Munsons at the Movies. My name is Kyle. I will once again be your host. Joined by the rest of the Munsons. Want to give them a wide berth.
What is called a born loser? A real Munson.
And talk a little bit about what's going on in their world. This time we'll start with James.
Yeah, I actually wanted to give a shout out to Aubrey. I think I've made jokes about picking out movies for students. I guess in my case it would be my nieces and nephews. I've done that the last month or so, and it is way more taxing than I expected it to be to take into account age groups, what's appropriate, how fascinated a 8-year-old might be versus a 13-year-old, what's traumatizing. We've nailed a couple of them, but it is way more work than I'd expect. And so I will rescind making jokes for the films that you've shown your students up to this point, because it was tough for me as well.
I appreciate that. I'm assuming you didn't show Jackie.
No. It's like, at this point, it's like I got to show them like previews of movies, and they all have to watch the preview and agree that that is acceptable, because some people are scared. Some people think it's stupid. And like, oh my God, this is tougher than I thought it was going to be.
How deep did y'all get into the David Arquette catalog?
Yeah. They loved all the screams. We made. No, I was kidding. I will say though, when you nail it, the highs are really high, because then I get to forever be the uncle who showed them Home Alone. Yep. And it's like I opened their eyes to this mythical story that will live on forever.
Getting the one right makes all of the other ones worth it.
What's going on with you?
I just want to apologize to everyone. Last time, I made a teacher error by rubbing it in everyone's faces that I had nothing to do and that I would be enjoying the summer by doing nothing. And in turn, the universe rewarded my hard work during the school year, educating the minds and building the youth to create a better America by giving me car trouble that I had to immediately fix. That cost me almost $1,000. And then a root canal that costed me about the same amount. Which the pain began Friday. So I couldn't get into the dentist until Monday. Well, actually, it was Tuesday. So I had multiple days of pain waiting for the root canal. And then the pain that proceeded after that. I'm not going to brag. It's, busy times are coming. I hope everyone is having a great July, because it's not great over here. I won't make that mistake again.
No more gloating in your intros. That's what I'm hearing.
I can't. I have to learn this lesson.
All right, Case, we found the bottom. Where are you at? In the middle of these highs and lows. How about you?
I'm feeling incredibly boring compared to these two previous shares. So all I'm going to say is I'm a massive Tina Fey fan, and I rarely get to end up in conversations talking with people about Tina Fey. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to tonight's conversation, and I'll leave it at that.
I want to give a shout out on my side to a fellow Munson guest. Whenever they do big things, I like to give the shout out. So Laura Beneke, who we've had on the show 4 or 5 times now, she did let me know she was chosen to be on the SAG Awards nomination committee this year.
Hell yeah.
Which means she gets early access. A lot of what's going to get judged for award season.
Dude, that is so cool.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
God dang, that's cool.
Our resident SAG actor just continues to do cool things out there.
Good for her.
Yeah, follow that.
But speaking of people doing cool things, we bring back Jim of FilmRage.
Hell yeah.
Jim is the co-host and the co-creator of the podcast FilmRage. He has had extensive experience as a film previewer for some of North America's best-loved film festivals. Jim has worked in film as an extra and carries a significant amount of rage, all caps, for things he finds annoying. Being Canadian, he's still Canadian, he is sorry for anyone he has offended, but at the same time is also passive-aggressive enough to also not care behind their backs. He was previously with us for the Owen Wilson episode, and it was an absolute delight. Welcome back to the pod, Jim.
Yeah, buddy.
Wow. That was a great intro. Wow.
You wrote it.
Speaking of sausage parties, is anyone else watching Sausage Party, the series now? Because,
On Prime.
yes,
I just saw it came out. I haven't watched it yet, though.
it's hilariously filthy. I love it. It's like I feel right now. It's a giant sausage party. I love it here, boys.
Jim, what have you guys been covering on the pod over in Film Rage Land?
For those who haven't heard us cover new releases to cinema, so we basically cover anything that comes to cinema. And recently, actually, we had there was a very limited amount of release the previous week that went into cinema. So we ended up watching a kids movie for the first time.
Oh boy.
Normally, there's enough films that are released that are adult films that we don't have to choose a kids movie. But because there was only 2 new releases, we had to watch Despicable Me 4 along with one other film. It generated a level of rage unseen on Film Rage in many years. It caused me to say, we got to find out if we have to watch these kind of terrible movies. So I guess fortunately or unfortunately for us, our audience is like, yeah, fucking watch those movies, bitch. And so I guess we're going to have to watch kids' movies too. So I don't know. I'm a little afraid of my own podcast now.
Those movies are so unrealistic.
I didn't buy one thing about it.
Shred it up, Jim. That's what you guys do, and you're damn good at it.
Yeah, I got some splaining to do.
All right, well, we're happy to have you back. Happy to get into this Tina Fey conversation, and let's rock and let's roll. All right, birthday is July 25th. All right, first and foremost, we have Zawe Ashton. She is in projects such as The Marvels, Velvet Buzzsaw, Greta, Nocturnal Animals, and 30 episodes of Fresh Meat. How old is Zawe Ashton?
Oh, this is tough.
I only recognized one of those titles.
Didn't see the Marvels?
No. What the hell are the Marvels?
He's not a Marvel guy. He's the baddie in The Marvels.
Zawe sounds like a really young age, so I'm gonna say 26 and a half.
Not a lot of 40-year-old Zowies is what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
It's a bad omen.
Mm.
I'm going to go 30.
36.
I'm going to go 31, I guess.
Come on now.
James is going to take the first one. Zawe's turning 40, which blew me away.
Looks great.
Yeah.
Great move.
She barely looks over 26.
She won this category.
I know. Number 2, Matt LeBlanc.
Oh, yeah.
Best known for his major role in Friends, and then his other show, Joey. Lost in Space, Charlie's Angels, Ed, which is not a great film, and the Night Moves music video from Bob Seger.
Oh, that's right.
How old is Matt LeBlanc?
Jeez.
Okay, I'm going to use Night Moves music video as my reference.
Joey is 58.
I'm in that same ballpark. I'm going to say 60?
I'm going to say 56.
I'm going to play some strategery here. And you, Kyle, you did leave off my favorite project of his called Episodes, which is one of the funniest TV shows I've seen in a long time. He's great in that. I'm going to play the game. I'm going to play the Price is Right rules. I'm just going to come in at 50.
Doesn't matter. That was because Jim wins because he's turning 57. We love a guest W. Love a guest W.
Worked really hard on that one, too, and I didn't get hardly anything. That sucks.
All right, last, certainly not least, we have David Denman for the Warren and Rigby's of the world. Best known for projects like 13 Hours, The Replacements, The Gift. He's Roy in The Office.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, Out Cold.
This guy's Roy.
Oh.
You called him by another name. His name is Roy. What are we doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Mayor of Easttown most recently. He's been in a lot of stuff.
He's also kind of been vindicated upon everyone's rewatch of The Office, in which you're like, they're just kind of in a bad relationship, and Pam's taking advantage of him a little bit here.
He's rough in that first season. The later seasons is definitely more complicated. That first season is rough, though.
Yeah.
How old is David Denman?
How old is Roy?
Great name.
I keep saying David. How old is Roy?
Ryan Murphy, tight end from The Replacements from the Washington Sentinels.
Jeez, that makes him older than I thought he was.
I'm going to sit with the deaf kid. I forgot he was the tight end.
I'm going 54.
What did I say Matt LeBlanc was? I'm going to say they're the same age.
I think he said 58.
58. That works.
52.
I'm going to play the same game, 50.
Case coming in late with the 50. He's turning 51. So Case takes that one.
Finally!
3 different winners today. Who didn't win one?
I don't want to talk about it.
James?
Yeah, I got one.
The losers.
Losers. Good. More for me and you. Well, happy birthday to those three and anybody else who has a birthday on July 25th. All right, we had 5 actors we threw onto the wheel for this here episode 104. They were John Michael Higgins, Elizabeth Marvel, I don't know, Claire Danes, Leah Seydoux, and we're doing a little Tina Fey today. She's got 53 acting credits, 26 writing credits, 19 producing credits. We've done a little bit of everything in the world of entertainment. But before we get into the details, the minutiae, and talk about the roles, well, we start with a little actor trivia to see if James can stump us, Fast and Furious style.
Yes, so Jim, you are part of the initiated of our, but for those of you at home who are new, I'm going to read off 3 facts, 2 of which are going to be true about Tina Fey, 1 of which is going to be not true about Tina Fey, but is going to be about one of the many illustrious cast members of the Fast and the Furious franchise. The gentleman here have to guess which one is not true about Tina. Fact number 1. Has never passed her driving test and still to this day does not know how to drive a car or have a driver's license. Fact number 2. When she was 5 years old, a random stranger attacked her while she was playing in her front yard and slashed her face with a knife. Fact number 3. He's the youngest recipient of the Mark Twain Prize ever.
Jeez.
Ooh. I think the first one is not her. It's Michelle Rodriguez.
Any fact that has to do with anybody from the Fast and Furious not having a driver's license is hilariously ironic.
I know, right?
I'm going to take a different stance here. I'm going to say 2 is going to be about her co-star from Free Guy, who played bank robber number 2 while she was the voice of the vacuum, which was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I could only find 2 movies that she had anything to do with anybody else from a Fast and the Furious movie, and it was that and Sisters with John Cena. So my normal game got really stuck here because of James' creativity. So welcome back to the show, James.
That's why I'm here.
To keep with our wrestling theme from last episode with Arquette. I like that. That's good.
I'm boxed into a corner here because I can't choose number 2 because I always choose a rapper. That feels in poor taste. Also, who in the Fast and Furious cast has won the Mark Twain Prize? So I've got to go with 1. And I'm going to circle back because James said he was going to do this one day, and he hasn't yet. And I'm going to say it was MC Jen because he was not driving in Too Fast, Too Furious.
Oh.
And that's why.
Oh, there you go.
I really got to learn some gin facts. I owe it to you at this point.
Well, I guess you're out of the game, Aubrey.
Yeah, that's
only 12 rappers in the whole thing, so there's only so many times you can say, and you say Ludacris half the time, Case. So there's only so many times I can say Ja Rule.
That's a lot of rappers for any film franchise, just so we're on the same page. Only 12? Only? That's quite a bit. That's pretty good.
Yeah, but they're not like really in it.
I kind of wanted to go on this route of the Mark Twain Prize, and I was looking through the list of Fast and Furious actors to see who I could ironically make a joke about. But I mean, other than like, I don't want to pick on Gal Gadot, but I'm not going to do that because I don't think she's going to win that award anytime soon.
Except a Razzie.
That's right. James, I'm pretty sure has used Fact 1 before, but I hate that I can't remember which Fast and Furious actor it was. So I'm going to guess it's an actor for the Fast and Furious franchise. Fact 1 is a lie.
Great guess, Kyle. Very specific. I appreciate you going out on a limb and narrowing down your choice.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So no one picked fact number 3, obviously, but it was just such a cool fact that I felt the need to highlight it. Fact number 3 is the youngest recipient of the Mark Twain Prize ever. Absolutely true. As of 2010, she was the 3rd female ever to win the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, with the first 2 being Whoopi Goldberg and Lily Tomlin. Since then, there's been 3 more women who have won it, but Tina Fey won it at the age of 40, and she was and still is by far the youngest to ever win it. I was incredibly impressed by that. Fact number 2, when she was 5 years old, a random stranger attacked her while she was playing in her front yard and slashed her face with a knife. That is true. It has resulted in a scar that you could see on her face that's kind of on the bottom left side of her cheek. Obviously, it's an incredibly traumatic experience. She hasn't really discussed it, and she recently opened up about it. And she said she's kind of grateful that she was so young when it happened because she doesn't have a ton of memories of it. She kind of proceeded unaware of it. She's like, I became a very confident kid, and it really almost was like she was able to forget about it until she became famous, because then every time she was on camera, people would be like, let's film you from the other side. She's like, oh, right, I have this scar on my face. I forgot. And now you guys have made me incredibly aware of it. But then she also said adults were incredibly kind to her and would give her gifts way past an age when she should receive gifts and candies and stuff. And she was made to feel special. And it wasn't until she was in her 40s, looking back, that she realized what should have shut her down and made her feel kind of less than, gave her a overinflated sense of ego and self, because she thought she was like incredibly smart and witty and funny and like a genius. And she's like, now I look back, people were just trying to be nice to me. And she's like, and I couldn't really put that together because I was a little kid and I was like, wow, everyone loves me. I'm getting all this stuff. It's a wild story, especially as like a young parent. You hear that and you're like, damn, that's a nightmare. But to hear how it's kind of impacted her was pretty cool to read. Number one, a lot of you guys guessed it, and a lot of you guys were partially right. Has never passed her driving test and still to this day does not know how to drive a car or have a driver's license. So during an episode of Jerry Seinfeld's Netflix show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, Fey confessed that, like many New Yorkers, myself included when I lived there, she let her driver's license expired and has forgotten how to drive and has not renewed it. Evidence so much so as when she was filming a commercial, she forgot to put the car in park and almost got into an accident because she had to drive for the commercial. She actually didn't buy her first car until quarantine because there was no public transit available and she was going insane with her family in their apartment. So that was a few years ago. Very common for people who grew up in a place that has great public transit to not drive, which leads us to this next part. She did have a license at some point. It has not been renewed. Both Natalie Emanuel and Cardi B, who grew up in London and New York City respectively, have never passed a driving test and do not have a license. And Jim, I'll give you credit. Michelle Rodriguez and both Jordana Brewster both didn't have licenses until they got into the Fast and Furious franchise, when they then took driving tests and passed. Cardi B and Natalie Emanuel, I do not judge them for never getting a license. I am fans of them, and if they need a ride somewhere, hit me up. I'll gladly be their chauffeur.
All right, Case, you're up. Snapshot and box office history. What kind of numbers are we looking at here?
There's not a ton to say about Tina Fey's box office. And I'm not saying that in a bad way either, right? Like, I don't think her box office numbers tell the story about Tina Fey and her impact in the world of TV and films. That being said, she also hasn't been in a lot of movies that have lost money. I think her foray into film and box office was bolstered heavily by her success and reputation on Saturday Night Live. The two movies that I had complete information on that lost money was Beer League, which she was in for a minute, and she had a thank you in the credit. And then the other one was Whiskey Foxtrot Tango, which lost $10 million. And I was really surprised that lost money, because I actually saw that in the movie theater. Until the other day, I was under the impression that movie at least broke even. So those were really the only two negative points of interest on her limited amount of credits that we needed to look at. But her comparative numbers are as such. In world gross, she's 81st out of 104. Star meter, she ranks 86th. Critic rank, and this one I was not surprised at, and I'm glad it came out this way. She's ranked 13th.
Wow.
Critic ranking with 64.8%. Fan ranking, she's 69th at 58%. And then she's 55th and 81st in two different box office metrics, which comes in ranking her at 66th out of 104.
That critic ranking is high, and I think what makes it hard for us in this, or what I perceive is going to make it hard for us in this episode, is that when it comes to her credits as a writer, I think you could put her up against any writer, because she is as talented as they come. And it's hard to separate someone who is that talented as a writer, who writes themselves in their shows and their movies, as an actor, right? And so to have them that high as an actor, I think is ludicrous in my opinion. But I think it's because you immediately associate her with maybe movies or TV shows that you love, because she is an incredible writer.
Incredible writer. In fact, the one thing that I've learned the most from doing this podcast is the amazing impact of well-written projects. We've had movies with the best actors in the world, and they were poorly written and produced, and they were trash. And we've had movies that we'd never heard of before, and they were so well written, and we loved them. And I think you're right, James. From a comedic writing standpoint, there's not many that are better than her.
I read a book on film criticism, and that was one of the first things that was mentioned was in the screenplay. George Clooney said it. He was like, you can make a bad movie out of a good screenplay, but you can't make a good movie out of a bad screenplay.
Yeah.
That kind of goes to your point. The not being able to separate it from the writing is a good observation. I also just think she doesn't have a ton of credits. She doesn't have a ton of movies, I mean.
Yeah.
So when it comes to just her acting in movies, she seems to choose her movies well.
Yeah.
Kind of sticks to what works for her, and she doesn't get nailed for it.
All right, well, let's get into the details of this, because there's a lot to talk about with her, either on TV, behind the scenes, writing, off screen, all the things. Thanks, Case.
You bet.
What we're calling her first major role dropped in 2004. So everything before, so anything pre-2004. I'll kind of go through some of these early pieces. James will pepper in some of the life stuff. But Elizabeth Tina Fey was born in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania in 1970. During her adolescent years, she started going by Tina instead of Elizabeth because of that, I assume, coming from that middle name of Stamatina.
Is Upper Darby a suburb of Philly?
Outside Philly. And so I was going to say, she went to Upper Darby High School. Do you guys know who the other big famous alum is? And one of my chapter brothers who went to Upper Darby High School?
No.
Famous singer-songwriter from the early 1970s died in a plane crash.
John Denver?
Not John Denver.
Oh, shit.
Buddy Holly?
Not Buddy Holly. Time in a Bottle.
Oh, not Jim Croce.
Bad Leroy Brown.
Yeah, Jim Croce.
Jim Croce, he went to Upper Darby High School.
Huh.
So that's the other famous alum from that high school. But
So must be from around Delco County.
Mm-hmm.
The Delco accent is actually one of my favorite accents in the country.
Mm-hmm.
She pulled it off in a couple of episodes or a couple of skits on SNL, and now that makes sense because I just love that accent up there. It's hilarious.
she pokes fun at it in some of her interviews too, like talking about like people she grew up with.
Yeah.
I mean, she did a little bit of everything in high school. She was an honor student. She was doing choir. She was in the drama club. She played tennis. She was the co-editor of the school newspaper. So she seemed like one of those students that was involved in all the things. Ideal student probably for people like Aubrey.
Love a good nerd.
That's right. Went on to University of Virginia, got her Bachelor of Arts in Drama, studied playwriting and acting, graduated in 1992. So none of that is terribly surprising.
No.
UVA.
The only thing that's surprising about that is she didn't have like 5 different majors. She strikes me as somebody that's so smart. She'd have walked out of there with like 5 or 6 degrees.
Right after college, she moved to Chicago, and eventually she started training with Second City, who we've talked about a ton over the years.
Yeah.
Obviously a huge training ground, along with the groundlings for improv comedians and a lot of folks that end up on the SNLs and the Mad TVs of the world.
She became real close friends with another young writer who I believe is related to one of our members of this podcast. But she met Adam McKay, and they became great friends.
I see what you're saying. Family connection to Aubrey McKay. Got it.
Yeah.
Aubrey's just he's not trying to endorse that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at that time, she starts doing Improv Olympic, and that's where she met her future husband, Jeff Richmond. He was the pianist for the group. Pianist, Pianist, just in case anybody listening at home thinks I can't enunciate properly.
Did you guys find anything in your research on her that where she got the comedy bug from? Because this background so far does not scream comedic actress, comedic writer.
She credits it to being a, quote, mature for her age child who got to watch like Carol Burnett and the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And those were shows that were, they were comedies, but they were comedies that, you know, the women had a little bit more dynamic characters. They're flawed. There's nuance. They're trying to get jobs. There's issues at work. Like, and it was the first time she had seen it portrayed that way. And she's like, I want to do that.
I see massive influence from Mary Tyler Moore in her career now that you say that. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, from everything I could parse, right? She starts in Second City. She's in Chicago. She goes to SNL as a writer. So she sent some scripts while she was at Second City pre-1997, eventually got hired. By 99, she was the first female head writer. at SNL. I mean, within 2 years' time, she's running the show over there and the writing team. She was on 145 episodes of the show over a 25-year period.
It cannot be overstated how impressive her becoming a head writer, period, and yet breaking through what was viewed as a boys' club in Saturday Night Live. For her to become the head writer and be the first female head writer in just 2 years is wildly impressive. It just goes to show how much of a phenom she is as a writer. And I would never say Lorne Michaels was like putting a ceiling on female cast members and female writers. I think he was also answering to studios and fans and critics and doing a lot of things. The shows were so strong at this time, nobody even brought it up. That's how impressive her skills were as the head writer.
Yeah, even Dennis Miller once said she was his favorite Weekend Update person because she just wrote the best jokes. Now, Dennis Miller is a unique human in himself. Didn't like a whole lot of what was going on in SNL, but had nothing but good things to say about Tina Fey.
The way she applied for it was Adam McKay told her, because, she's like, I tried improv. She's like, I wasn't great at it. She's like, I like stand-up comedy, but like, it's too much for me. It's too overwhelming. She's like, so like, she knew she was kind of like a writer at her core. And Adam McKay was like, you should send some of your sketches to Lorne Michaels. And my advice is make every sketch 10 pages. And she's like, what? He's like, yeah, characters, in-depth jokes, what the scene looks like, everything, so that there is no room for interpretation of what you're going for. And then Lorne was like, oh, okay, let's talk. And she got out there and like all the advice everyone said for meeting Lorne Michaels was like, tell the truth, be honest, tell what you think is funny. But if there's one piece of advice, don't cut him off when he speaks or don't finish his sentences because he speaks incredibly slow. And she's like, and I had all that prep work. And then when I met him, she's like, it was almost impossible to not cut him off or finish his sentences because he speaks so deliberately slow.
Didn't he even forget where she was from? And he said, and you're from?
Yeah,
Because she didn't want to answer him. Yeah, I think I heard that story too. It's really funny.
Yeah.
When you think of Lorne Michaels too, actually, and you think of who he is aligned with, I think she is probably his most aligned with person.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like you see the projects that they've done together and they pull her on stage all the time for Saturday Night Live. Just one of the most kind of guest appearances of anybody that shows up. So see that they're obviously pretty close.
As a writer, she has amazing range, and she can do anything from clean as a church sermon to, as blue as could be.
What are some of the characters or skits over the years that you guys have enjoyed?
I like her Sarah Palin, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the legend.
Her and Poehler just such amazing chemistry that everything they were in together. But I do have a throwback that reminded me that she was in it. I don't know. Do you guys remember the Maya Rudolph episode where we talked about the Mom Jeans commercial?
Yeah, of course.
Her Weekend Update stuff is good too.
Yeah, I think that's what I think of every time when I think of her. Is I think when it comes to Weekend Update, there are so many legends that have done it that you have to kind of make it your own. And I think hers is, I think it stands out. I don't think it's my favorite of all time, but I think it's in contention for it. I think a lot of people would say that they don't like Norm Macdonald's, but I love Norm Macdonald's humor, so I would put him at the top of mine.
Yeah.
But she is right there. I think she's fantastic.
Elite company, for sure. I mean, if you look at her career trajectory too, from 97, I mean, we're going to talk about first major roles, 2004. That's 7 years of her just writing, doing occasional characters on that show and letting that be the bulk of her on-screen or behind-the-screen work as a professional.
We're going to be honest, her acting career got a massive bump because of Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
Talented people often have good luck happen to them, and she had some really good luck occur. God bless her.
Well, another SNL actor there, Rachel Dratch, her and Dratch did an off-Broadway two-woman show in 2000, right, for the Millennium hits called Dratch and Fey. So it's just something a little unique and different away from the SNL stage to kind of showcase some of their skills. Also this time, her and Eric Gurian, I might have butchered that pronunciation, but they founded Little Stranger Production Company, which is my understanding funded A lot of her TV projects over the years, like Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and some other ones along the way. So one of many Munsons we've covered that created their own production company over the years.
That rules.
Oh, yeah.
I love when performers do that and just take control over their projects. I just think it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers.
Especially 4 years into a career like that, too.
Yeah.
It wasn't like she'd been in the game for 20 years and said, I'll start a production company. It was only 4 years into really her career. 2001, she got married to Jeff, and they have 2 daughters together, Zenobia and Penelope. Family life seems like it's going really well. I'll talk about in a little bit her love for Halloween and how that aids into my Munson Meter score, because Amy Poehler, not a big Halloween fan. Future glimpse, if we ever cover Amy Poehler, going to take a hit on the Munson Meter because of that little fact. But, our Munson Meters are our Munson Meters.
That's right.
Then just some smaller stuff during this time. So like Martin and Orloff, she plays a Southern woman in 2002. So nothing really big on film until she wrote and starred in 2004's Mean Girls as Mrs. Norbury, and Case drew this one.
This is the benefit of having an established career, that you get to come out and this is your first feature film. Mean Girls is a 2004 teen comedy starring Lindsay Lohan, Rachel McAdams, Tim Meadows, Anna Gasteyer, Amy Poehler, and the star of our show tonight, Tina Fey. This is actually the first time I've ever seen this movie. So this was a first-time watch for me.
Oh, my God.
And I will say, I'm glad I hadn't seen it until now. And I was watching it with a purpose, because when this movie came on, I was like, holy hell, is this a Saturday Night Live movie? Because it opens up like a Saturday Night Live movie. You see Lauren Michaels, Tim Meadows. You see all these Saturday Night Live people. This movie actually came from Tina Fey reading a book called Queen Bees and Wannabes by Rosalind Wiseman, where the book looks at the damaging effects psychologically on high school girls specifically from social cliques and bullying and peer pressure and all that stuff. And the one thing I thought was interesting is that this movie takes place in a suburb of Chicago. Another really kind of, I don't want to say instrumental, but formidable or high-profile movie dealing with high school social structure was The Breakfast Club in the 80s, which took place in a suburb of Chicago. So I wonder if there was some sort of a connection there when she wrote this. It's not based on a book. It was just kind of inspired by the topic. So Tina Fey drew from her own experiences with the information from Queen Bees and Wannabes and then wrote this book. Based on what you guys have said and everybody else has said, I'm sure everyone knows the plot of this movie, since I'm the only person on the planet that hadn't seen it until now. What I found interesting was the amount of pop culture references that I've certainly recognized. Also, if I'm being honest, every time I'd ever heard of this movie before and I heard people talking about it, I just kind of thought it was another telling of the story of Clueless, right? Like I just didn't know what the movie was about. But that's where, like, I think Tina Fey's brilliance as a writer comes in, because that high school teen comedy movie really becomes a story with a purpose. And I thought she used kind of cliches and tropes and predictability against the audience. I mean, what happened to Regina George, it was shocking. I was very much caught off guard as to how that went down. I appreciated that. I mean, I didn't appreciate the violence. We got to be careful about violence in teen comedies. It was a good movie. I thought the movie was a pleasure to watch. And like I said, it was incredibly well written. As for the acting, I don't think there was much of a stretch for her, because she wrote the story. So she knew the character. She knew what she needed to do. And we've seen her play that role on Saturday Night Live. I don't think from an acting perspective, the story here is about Tina Fey, but I do think this movie as a whole and the writing of it is.
It's one of the most quotable movies ever made. It's so good.
I've heard them all too.
Oh, you have, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I love Mean Girls. I'm absolutely shocked that it has a 66 audience score. That I think it should be substantially higher. I think it's incredibly rewatchable. We're talking about a Lindsay Lohan movie, and I'm saying that with my whole chest, and that's how good the writing is in this movie, and that's also how good I think the bad guy is in this movie.
Yes.
In Rachel McAdams, who is absolutely incredible as Regina George.
Yeah.
It is one of those movies where I'm in my mid-30s and I was like, I would absolutely cower in fear around a girl like that in high school. She seems incredibly intimidating and mean, and I don't want to be in the view of someone who's like that, who's mad at me. Rewatching it, I thought it still holds up and it's still fantastic. I absolutely love Mean Girls.
I have to defend Lindsay Lohan for a minute here. The fact that you called her out. So my belief on Lindsay Lohan, obviously she comes from a child actor scenario, but I think Lindsay Lohan is one of the most talented child actors, and I think she got robbed because of her addictions. Lindsay Lohan is very underrated.
Right, Jim.
I won't argue that point. I agree. I think she was a great child actress, and she's a Long Island girl, so I support her. But this was like right at the beginning of when she went down that slope, and it does suck.
I agree. Super talented child actor. I also want to point out that I've heard two great sentences so far. One, I'd like to defend Lindsay Lohan for a second. Also, Case saying, what happened to Regina George is shocking. What an incredible sentence. Two things I never thought I'd hear, I'd say.
As a middle-aged man, too.
The many things I've said that have gotten me in arguments that really are not arguments, it's just grown men shouting at me. This is probably top 3. I've never liked this movie. It once led one of my friends to look at me in a movie theater and tell me to get out and then not talk to me for a while. I don't have anything eloquent to say to oppose any of the points that you guys have made. I just don't find this movie all that funny. And that's really kind of where I land on it. The Lindsay Lohan of it all, as great of a child actor as she was, and I do fully believe in that and the talent that she had there, I don't find her to be all that compelling in this. Rachel McAdams is flawless, so I will not.
Attaboy.
This is nowhere near an indictment on her. She's great. It really, her friend group kind of hold the movie together for me. Obviously, Tim Meadows is a legend, so anytime he shows up, the movie is amazing. It's just one of those movies that, like, I've kind of just put in the nice ever-growing cabinet of this one just wasn't for me, so I'm happy for everyone else. The Tina Fey of it is, I often forget that she's in it, even though I rarely forget that she wrote it.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much of a trend that'll be throughout this conversation. The kind of separating of those two things. Because if I remember correctly, she mostly plays this character straight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's like sassy. She's sassy and sarcastic, especially after she gets accused of peddling drugs. She lets her student know exactly how she feels about that.
I think my father, the inventor of the toaster strudel, wouldn't be too happy to hear this, but I appreciate your perspective.
I'm not obsessed with Mean Girls, but I recognize it's a pop culture staple and it is eminently quotable, and it's because of the script that she wrote. And so I think that's really cool. I wasn't the target audience in that, but I could still watch it years later and find it pretty entertaining.
I think she has really good chemistry with people, and Tim Meadows is one of them. And they weren't on Saturday Night Live at the same time, not for long if they were. So she hadn't done a ton of work with him. So I think her chemistry with comedic actors is as good as we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Which speaks to her intelligence, just kind of full stop, but also like her brilliance as a comedian. She's the person you would want, I imagine you would want to work with.
Yeah.
Because she's the perfect person to work off of. When you watch the Golden Globe stuff, Amy Poehler shines in those things to me.
She does.
But she shines because she's getting set up.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And so it's like that seems to be what's happening all the time. So yeah, she works with Tim Meadows. He shines, she sets him up, and she kind of does that, but it speaks to her being a good writer also.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really fascinating point, because I had the same thought when I watched the Golden Globes things. I always thought Poehler was funnier, but it's probably Tina Fey probably writes a lot of those jokes. Tina's probably setting her up in ways. That's interesting.
You see that when they're in movies together too. Like Tina usually plays the straight man and Amy's the wackadoo, right? But I also think one of the things Tina Fey gets trapped, she's not a great actor as far as dramatic roles. If it's comedic roles and it's the right fit for her, she does a great job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Kyle, to your point, I mean, you talk about setting people up. I mean, 30 Rock, I think we're going to talk about that next. That's when people started thinking Alec Baldwin was funny.
Yeah, that's a good transition, because that was her next big thing. I know she proposed it I think, to NBC at the time, and they were like, meh. And then she was like, this would be a really cool concept. But yeah, she played Liz Lemon, wrote 139 episodes over an 8-year period, and she got a bunch of award wins because of her role in there, and competing with Amy Poehler during that time.
With Parks and Rec, yeah.
She was also competing with Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow, this show feels underrated to me.
Yes, it's very underrated.
And so I have a lot of conversations about the comedies of this time. So a lot of conversations about The Office. I've had many arguments about how I think Parks and Rec is the best of the lot, aside from maybe Veep, but it's better than The Office. I had a lot of arguments about that. A lot of the 30-minute comedies around this time, 30 Rock either doesn't get mentioned.
Community.
Yep, Community. 30 Rock either doesn't get mentioned or gets mentioned last.
It does.
It feels underrated, and this show is absolutely brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at it through the scope of her being the creator and the writer and the star, but she's the star in the way that only she can do it. Everyone else is so funny. It feels like a showcase piece for every other person in the show other than her. And it's because she shows up, she'll say something funny or quippy, she'll react to a lot of what's happening, but the other person is getting set up to be really funny around her.
Yeah.
And it's just brilliant because you don't see comedic shows like that, where the center focus of it, the person that we're tuning in to see, is showing you everything else.
The point guard.
She shows up in a scene and lays the groundwork for everyone to just go nuts, and they do, because she puts hilarious people in this show. This show is absolutely brilliant.
It's by far my favorite TV show that's ever been made.
Ooh, wow. Ooh.
Like, I do not watch shows over and over and over again. Like, I just don't. I also don't rewatch movies hardly ever, unless there's a reason for it, like for a Tina Fey episode on the Munsons. But, traditionally, my belief is new content is the greatest gift that we can have. And so I try to watch as much new content as possible. But this is one show that I will go back and watch again because I think it's timeless. I think every single episode is a home run.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's the most hilarious show that's ever been done.
High marks.
It's better than Seinfeld. I think it's better than MASH. I think it's like anything. You put the comedy against this, to Aubrey's point, with the characters that are in it, it's brilliant.
Jim, how does this rank against Corner Gas?
Well, it's good you should say that, because Corner Gas might be the best Canadian show that's ever been made, but this is the greatest show that's ever been made.
Okay.
Do you guys remember the episode where she realized she was the mean girl from high school? She was the bully at her class reunion.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, it was really funny. And then the other one, do you guys remember the lemon party gifs that were going around or memes that were going around?
I know about a different lemon party. But
Yeah, I know the lemon party that I don't want to discuss.
There's an episode where her parents come to town. They register under her dad's name, and so it's Lemon Party of 5. Her dad's name is Richard Lemon, and he's an older guy. So Alec Baldwin makes the line during it, you can't have a lemon party without old Dick. Somehow that got in on network television, and it was hilarious. Even if you didn't know the lemon party bit, it was still funny how it was written and it was pulled together. Can't have a lemon party without old Dick.
Everybody knows that.
that's a snapshot in pop culture time right there.
That's right.
You can't have more chemistry range than on one end working with Tracy Morgan, who's a comedic genius, and on the other end working with whatever you think about him. Alec Baldwin is a great actor. And to be able to work with those two comedically and make both of them funny or funnier than they would have been without is really impressive on her part.
And it's Tracy Morgan in full Tracy Morgan mode, like
He's the best.
fully unleashed almost.
Yeah.
This is the best showcase of her ability, I think, which isn't surprising because it's she created it. It's the best showcase of that because it showcased her strength in writing and setting everybody up via being a writer. When she's at her funniest to me, it's when she's making very simple observations.
Yeah.
That to me is when she's really nailing her jokes. It's just a very simple observation about something that we've all seen. It's very like kind of Seinfeld-esque in that. Like the very first episode is a hot dog cart someone's standing in the wrong line.
Yeah.
This is the very first joke. And she just walks around with these hot dogs for like 3 scenes. These hot dogs keep showing up.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you were to make this stupid stand that I made, this is how you'd have to live with this. And it's just a simple observation of like, this is fucking annoying. And this is what I'm going to do. And this was really fucking stupid. I love that she does that. And this show is little observations on little things that she just pokes at and showcases and shows. It's absolutely brilliant. It's one of those that I'm afraid will get lost at time and can't.
And the funny things about those little things too is they come back through that whole episode, right? Because Pete talks about the fact that you can't get fired, you got to buy those hot dogs. It's just like those little things, and that happens in every episode. Like it's like it gets woven into the story. Like it's like they plant a seed and then it gets woven through it, and the joke still continues.
It's the 10th most Emmy-nominated show of all time.
Wow.
And it does not get the pop culture love that some of these others do.
The 3 stars being Tina Fey, Alec Baldwin, and Tracy Morgan. Tina Fey and Alec Baldwin kind of bounce off of each other a lot. Tracy Morgan, Aubrey, you're right. He's given the freedom to do his style to the 10th degree. The character that I find the most hilariously quotable is it Jane Krakowski?
Yeah.
Jenna Maroney.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's so fucking funny in that where she is just the most clearly self-absorbed, don't give a shit about anything but myself star. And they give her nothing but great one-liners. One of the ones that made me like burst up laughing is finally someone calls her and is like, do you care about anything other than yourself? She's like, yeah. I mean, I get really sad when I think about how nice, pretty little blonde girls don't realize that if they are mean, they can get what they want in life, which is why I started a camp called Jenna's Kids, where I teach pretty blonde girls how to be mean to other people. It's like, that's so fucking funny.
But everybody, like every character in it, like even Kenneth's character in it, the page, he's
my favorite.
He's just so natural in that role too.
Not to belabor the point, but they're all set up to just be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Just the simplicity of them going around the table in the first episode. This is who this is. This is who this is. This we call him Twofer because he's a Harvard guy and he's a black guy. Like these little setups are hilarious, but then they also lay a foundation of like, this is essentially what this person is going to make fun of for the entire. We're going to make jokes around this idea, and this person is going to kind of spearhead that. She just sets the table for all that. She just distributes all of this throughout this entire show. It's remarkable how it comes together and how it stays together.
I wonder if this show suffers from the maybe impression that people think it's a parody of Saturday Night Live. The Office and Seinfeld, they were all original shows. Some of these were stories that occurred from real life that they just took and put into action or put into the story.
I think what happened was The Office and Parks and Rec to a lesser extent, but The Office changed comedy on television at that time.
Yeah.
And so 30 Rock doesn't feel like those shows in any real way. It feels almost more traditional. When comedy changes on television, that's what we're quoting. That's what we're kind of following. And so 30 Rock hits with the people who love television, but it doesn't seem to hit with the average person. And it's not rewatchable because it feels older than it is, even when you rewatch it. So it's like my students watch The Office. They don't watch 30 Rock. And I also wonder how much of that is down to they don't watch SNL either.
Yeah.
Beer League, Case, you said she was in like one scene of Beer League, right? Like the front desk girl.
I think she was like the front desk girl. Yeah.
It's a movie we talked about in the Seymour Cassell episode, Artie Lang film, but Seymour Cassell has some pretty diabolical one-liners, and there's the old fart, and I enjoy it just to watch him be a crotchety old man.
He's great.
The movie is probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. When I watched it, I was like,
thank you.
The guy is the most annoying fucking person that's ever walked the face of the earth. Not one thing he said was funny through the entire movie. I just thought it was painful for me to watch that movie. It was just like, oh my God, thank God I didn't have to pay to rent this thing. Pay to go see it in cinemas. It probably didn't make it to Canada. There's a filter at the border that said This is not Canadian content because it's too awful, and Canadians are funny, and this is not.
You did produce Trailer Park Boys, one of the greatest shows of all time. So
That's right.
I'm with that. I get that.
Exactly. Trailer Park Boys.
So glad this take is on this. So glad this is happening.
Anyways, we'll move on. She's only in it for a scene. It's not really about her. It's crossing the paths of other Munsons here.
Can I just say there was one line in Beer League that was good? Don't eyeball me. When I was in the joint, I fucked guys bigger than you.
Oh, classic line.
Because Artie Lang starts to pivot and he goes, "Wait, did Dirt just say you like to fuck guys?" Man of the Year 2006 alongside Laura Linney, Robin Williams movie. She played herself in that picture. Was on an episode of Sesame Street 2007, and then a comedy that I think I'd only seen once, and that she plays Holbrook in Baby Mama, a project with Amy Poehler. Who wants to talk a little bit about Baby Mama's premise?
Baby Mama's premise is that Tina Fey is a very successful business marketer for like a health food company, where the CEO is played by Steve Martin, who I find hilarious. And in this role, he plays a very creepy-ish, but like disconnected from reality kind of guru health food company owner. And she's, focused on her career but has not focused on getting into relationships, and she wants to have a kid and she can't. And so she is going to get a surrogate, and her surrogate ends up being Amy Poehler. And Amy Poehler is like really friendly when they first meet, and then becomes like the cartoonish white trash version of Amy Poehler that we've seen her do before. This was my first time watching it. My wife has always loved this movie. You know what? It's not great, but it's also not bad. I think it was a good comedy. There were a bunch of one-liners that I loved. And I will say that I have quoted, "Is that poop or chocolate? It's chocolate." I've done that the entire existence of my daughter's life. I've made that exact joke, and it's hit 10 times out of 10. Never not funny to everyone who's around when I say that.
As a parent, that's definitely a line for
Yeah. It's like, is that poop or is that chocolate? And then you lick it off their fingers, and everyone is repulsed when they see it. Yeah.
Never looks that delicious.
This movie's surprisingly good.
Yeah.
It's got, one or two or three more twists than it probably needed. They seem to like really go for like the misdirection. They would have kept it simpler. It would have been even more emotionally effective. But it's very funny. Steve Martin kind of steals the movie. But so does Romany Malco, who just randomly is in way more scenes than you would expect him to be, and is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
In the best kind of way, because I've got to be honest, this is the era of these comedies where, the black guy, the friendly black guy shows up and you kind of roll your eyes and you're like, oh, we know what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. He did it in the best way that it can be done. And it was just like, oh yeah, let's make fun of all of these people right to their face and let's just see what happens. And it's hilarious. This movie's like surprisingly good. I enjoyed it.
It's definitely got a cult classic following. Like, there's a lot of people that are like big Baby Mama enthusiasts.
I think this one too is one that it's probably the most Liz Lemony of all her roles that she's played.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Like when you see this one, you're like, okay, and that's probably why I enjoyed it more than most of her movies that she's the star. It's because she's most Liz Lemony of all her other roles.
It's back to that simple thing, like she's playing it mostly straight. And everyone's being funny off of her. Mm-hmm. She's not doing a ton of the humor. She's just reacting to stuff.
Yep. I also like the bit of Sigourney Weaver. Every time they talk to her, she's talking about how fertile she is. And everyone's like, there's just no way.
And they're joking how old she is.
She's talking to her. She's like, you're not telling me that my baby would be carried by some poor underpaid woman from the third world. Sigourney's like, no. And then turns around and writes something down. Like, no, of course not.
Go check it out. Available on the Max in the States, if you're listening. For our Canadian friends, I don't know. You're going to have to do a Google search. Well, after an appearance as herself in an episode of SpongeBob in 2009, She played the role of Shelley in what we're calling our largest critic gap, which is The Invention of Lying, a role we covered, or a movie we briefly discussed on the Philip Seymour Hoffman episode, and James has it.
Yeah, so Invention of Lying came out in 2009 as a 56 critic score and a 39% audience score. Ricky Gervais plays a down-on-his-luck writer. The concept is he lives in a world where lying simply doesn't exist, and the concept of it is completely foreign to anyone, so no one even expects for people to lie. Ricky suddenly develops the ability to lie, and that notion that honesty is the best policy that everyone's in this world has been abiding by kind of goes out the window, and he uses that skill for personal gain, like becoming incredibly wealthy by lying at casinos, by winning, to getting women to sleep with him because if they don't, quote, the world will end, and everyone believes him. So that is the concept of this. And admittedly, I remember liking this movie the first time I saw it. I also remember telling Kyle that I liked it. And upon rewatching it, I want to say that I'll add this to the list of movies that proves 15 years ago I was a fool whose opinions on art should have been actively ignored. And I'm sorry, Kyle. Rewatching this movie, I realized that concept that does sound like a good concept that is interesting for a comedy movie is about 20 minutes of jokes, and then they kind of lose steam immediately. And the last 15 minutes, they try to fit in a bunch of deep, thought-provoking ideas. But the other big chunk of the movie is a one-trick pony that becomes really odd and like less funny and more frustrating with how little it wants to explore. So like the first 20 minutes, they knock out a bunch of jokes that work because they take advantage of the premise. Like retirement homes are called a sad place where homeless old people go to die. And Pepsi ads are called when they don't have Coke, like stuff like that. Like that is a joke. Jennifer Garner doesn't want to date Ricky Gervais. And when he asks why, she says, because you're fat and ugly. And if we get married, we'd have fat, ugly kids. You're like, okay, funny, but where can we go with this? And there's so many places that you can go with that. And it just refuses to, and it loses steam like immediately. The other thing that I found weird upon rewatching it is it never really explains why people in this world are like soulless. You get that they can't lie, but that doesn't explain why they can't be polite or make jokes or think intelligently about anything. And the middle 80% of this movie is them trying to make you think Jennifer Garner is a bad guy because she is not attracted to Ricky Gervais, which could have been an interesting concept, like a flip on a rom-com. But they really just want to hammer home that like she's shallow, where on its surface it's more like she's not attracted to you, man, and you're the one. This concept was your idea for this movie, so like you could have gone deeper, and they just refused to. And then the middle of it becomes kind of like a self-serving Ricky Gervais. Everyone is dumb except for me, and I'm the only one who really gets it, kind of vehicle. And that's a tough pill to swallow looking back and remembering that I liked this movie, because I don't like this movie. The final 10 minutes go into something that I think would have been an extremely cool concept to explore, which is he accidentally invents religion because he's trying to comfort his dying mother, and people overhear him describing heaven and begin following him. And I think the cool concept here is that sometimes it is okay to lie when it isn't self-serving, and what that would do in this world, and that the lies religion can tell might help people because it comforts them or it guides them into being better versions of themselves. There is a story here that could have been told, and they just don't do it. It is let's make the same joke for an hour and a half, and after 20 minutes, it's more like, all right, we got to come up with something else. And unfortunately, I think Tina Fey's character, Shelley, is a good example of that, because one of the first jokes she makes I thought was great, which is she explains to Ricky Gervais, how he's most likely going to get fired because he's not really that good at what he does. And then she explains, like, kind of in a joking way, like, yeah, I'm a secretary, but I have a master's degree. And, like, she does like a little kind of feminism in the workplace thing. It was like, oh, that's great. But I think with her playing herself again, kind of playing it straight, the line seems like incredibly calculated. Like that first one works. And then after that, it's like, well, if these lines are incredibly calculated, some of them do not age well. And it's like, so where was the calculation on that one? they're just not as funny. And so the one person here who I did find funny was the person who fully commits to this world and isn't kind of winking at the camera, and that's Jennifer Garner, who is like trying to add the emotion to this story that no one else is adding. And I did appreciate that, but this movie, I am sorry that at any point I might have suggested this to someone. I think it's a cool concept that has a bunch of cool concepts that it just doesn't even touch on.
The most funniest thing about this is that Ricky Gervais is a devout atheist.
Yes.
So that's what makes that part of it actual funny.
I get it. Like that, obviously he doesn't want to explore that because he hates religion, but like that could have been, a meta joke into itself, kind of like what Louis C.K. did with his show Louis, where it's like I can make fun of the version of me that the audience clearly knows. It's like, yeah, religion isn't a bad thing. Like, wow, Ricky Gervais is saying that. It's like it can be helpful to tell these lies to people, but he's just mostly like, I wrote the 10 Commandments on pizza boxes, and that's the end of the movie. And you're like, all right, cool.
The other thing that's dumb about this film is that everybody, like you made the point, they're stupid, first off, so they have no deep thought about anything. But on top of that, it's like they just have no filter, but he's filtered through the entire movie, even before he could lie. So it's like it sets rules for itself, and then it doesn't live by those rules, because if people are just saying what they think all the time, it's more like a What Men Want or film, right? Like the Mel Gibson film. But that's not what happens. It's like it's only meant maliciously at times, and it just seemed awkward and not correct through the entire movie.
Right, like Tina Fey calls him a gay slur unprovoked. And it's like, what does lying have to do with that?
Mm.
where is the premise? What is the joke? Like, I don't understand. And I think the joke at that point was just like, hey, we're saying unfiltered things. Like, that's not really what lying is. Like, it's a little different. And that's why it just started to, it bothers. Yeah, like if no one can lie and you had to describe items as what they are, yes, that could be very funny. But like after that, it's like, oh, and what are people like? It's like, this is not what people would be like.
This is Hollywood trying to capitalize on Ricky Gervais. I bet you this was a half-written TV show, and they were like, hey, we will give you a truckload of money if we can make a movie. And he's dusted off this script, rewrote it as a movie, and 15 years later, here we are talking about it.
I think Ricky Gervais is also better in TV shows.
Yeah, I watched this trailer and skipped the movie.
Good idea.
Yeah, he saw a lot of the jokes, Aubrey.
Well, what about Date Night 2010 alongside Steve Carell, Mila Kunis? Her and Steve Carell going on a crazy, wicked, weird time as a couple who pretend to be another couple at a restaurant to get a seat and end up in the middle of a dirty cop web of crime and lies.
I think this movie's amazing. Like, it's really silly. Like, it's not like the pinnacle of comedic filmmaking, but it touches on more of like a middle-aged angst than I would expect it to. This movie's like immensely rewatchable.
Mm-hmm. Scene where her and Carell have to dance for William Fichtner's character as the DA, and he's like, I don't like their vibe. Take them out, and they're like, oh, we're just getting warmed up. Robotic sex. He's like, oh, I like them now. It's stupid.
Totally getting off on it.
The Wahlberg stuff is my favorite.
Oh, yeah. When we saw this in cinemas, my wife and I laughed our asses off at that car chase scene where they smash into the car and the taxi cab driver's just losing his shit. But it's funny. It wasn't as funny the second time around, but I was still laughing. But no, my wife didn't find it as funny. But in cinemas, I thought that was the funniest car chase scene I'd ever seen in my life. Back to her comment about how she can gel with great comedians, like he's at the top of her game, she's at the top of her game, and they were just, I bet you there was a lot of ad-lib that was going on in that one. But just they were able to capture because it was just so good.
They had a believable chemistry. Like in the moments where they are together at dinner and they're supposed to show discord in their relationship, it seems like this could be a struggling, dysfunctional couple who truly love each other, but have just lost the ability to communicate over the years. I bought it.
She's funnier in this than she is in most of the movies I've seen her in. She's not just setting him up.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think this is one of the great things about her being with someone like him in this, because he's also good at setting other people up as well.
Yes, he is.
So he kind of lays some groundwork for her, and she's funnier than, I'm trying to think of another movie that I would say that she individually made me laugh as much, and I don't think I can think of one. She's very funny in this.
Yeah, you're right.
When she doesn't know what a flash drive is, and what does she call it? She calls the computer sticky thing or whatever. That's what we call it in my office, computer sticky thing. She's like, "What's a flash drive?" Don't judge me, but what's a flash drive?
The thing when they come over to Mark Wahlberg with what's her face as his sex buddy, and she's like, "Oh, we have sex with them now."
Okay, so 2010, same year, she wins that Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. And then she also got her Walk of Fame star like David Spade in 2011. David Spade still got his earlier. So
once they mention you amongst David Spade, you know you've made it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, these are longtime Munson jokes. True listeners will know.
But it is fact.
It is fact.
He did get it first. This is not like we're rewriting history.
We're not talking about the justice of said fact. We're just naming the fact here, people.
Mm-hmm.
It was in Black Sheep. What are you talking about?
That's right. Black Sheep and Tommy Boy. Very important.
There you go.
And Joe Dirt.
Joe Dirte. Megamind 2010 alongside Will Ferrell. She voices a role named Roxanne. And then something that Case really likes, and that she released an autobiography called Bossypants in 2011. So this woman's done everything at this point. Wrote the book.
Yeah.
Created a production company. Clearly a good writer. So an autobiography is not wildly off the wall.
Broadway,
a little off-Broadway show, and then doing some acting. It's
a great book, by the way, if you haven't read it. If you get the audiobook, she actually reads it, so it's even better. I listened to it twice, so it's funny, and it's really insightful.
That's a man who came prepared to talk about Tina Fey.
We started getting ready for this. Was there a particular story or takeaway that you really appreciated from that book?
No, it's really cool. Like, she just really goes into who she is as a person, and the jokes are just really good. Like, you really get to see her at her. It was 30 Rock that made me buy the book, because we would always do that on long trips. We'd buy an audiobook, a couple of audiobooks, and then listen to them on the road. That was when it came out. We bought it and listened to it, and then we've listened to it subsequently, my wife and I, on trips. So yeah, I would say highly recommend, especially with you, as you're a huge Tina Fey fan. Definitely get it, pick it up.
Yeah, I'm interested.
2013, Anchorman 2. She's an Entertainment Tonight reporter alongside Steve Carell, Will Ferrell, Christina Applegate, James Marsden, a whole litany of folks. Jim Carrey too. I forgot to write in there. She's one of the. She's part of the brawl.
Wasn't Amy Poehler also part of her crew?
Yeah, her and Amy Poehler were the ET reporters. Mm-hmm. Yep, back at it again.
That's really funny.
And then she hosted Golden Globes for the first time in 2013. I believe they did 2013, 14, 15, and then they had a hiatus for a while and then came back in somewhere in the 2020s. Someone could tell me.
2021.
Maybe, yeah.
The COVID Globes.
Oh, that's right. They did the split.
They were in different places.
That's right. Yep. Good call. Yeah, they're a pretty good comedic duo that if you want to put in front of an award show. I feel like they're requested constantly.
Their chemistry is incredible.
They're good hosts.
And they're great at balancing the jokes that are like, we're going to poke fun at the audience, but we're not going to go too far to where like,
yeah,
we're all pointing and laughing at one person, which some comedians are great at, but like that doesn't really go over well at these award shows.
They're solid hosts. They give like really good monologues. They're perfect for the Globes, particularly because like the host that everyone thinks of with the Globes is Ricky Gervais, and mainly because he just goes in there and just lights everyone on fire. They do like a more palatable version of what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's what makes them so good, especially in comparison to him or following him.
Yeah, I agree.
It makes a good tandem to him. They do similar stuff. They go after some people, but it's just they do it in a way that seems more, I can just enjoy this more. It doesn't feel as like aggressive.
Aubrey, that's a really good point. Has she ever done a roast?
I think so.
No, I don't. But I bet she'd be fantastic at it.
Because she could do the same thing. She just does it more palatable, which wouldn't fit in at a roast. But I was just trying to think of what's the most abrasive I've ever seen her, and I can't think of a time.
I think she'd be great in a roast because of that. It would be like a change of pace.
Yeah.
Because she gives like body punches. You don't realize like they hurt until later.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of her jokes at Steve Martin's, I think he won the Mark Twain Humor Award, and she's honoring him, and she loves Steve Martin. She's like, I remember the advice that Steve Martin gave me. It stuck with me forever. He said, there are no small roles. It's like, they're just small actors. And when you pick up Martin Short, make sure you support him by the neck. So fucking funny.
Her and Amy Poehler have a very Steve Martin Short thing going on. And I appreciate the hell out of both of them.
Yeah.
She is very Steve Martin. Amy Poehler is very Martin Short. So I love the connection that continues to come up here.
Their best combo joke in any of the Globes is the joke where Tina Fey starts by saying, The Hunger Games is a big award nominee tonight, which is what I also call the 6 weeks before I got into this dress for the show. And so everybody kind of like laughs a little bit. And then Amy Poehler says, Life of Pi got nominated quite a bit as well. And that's what I'm going to call the next 6 weeks after this show. And then they give each other a high five. And I was like, that is such a beautifully written and well-timed joke, because it's going to take some time to get there. I loved it. It's awesome. Well, let's get to our lowest critic score. Jim, I don't know. We'll see what his thoughts are on Immission, where she plays Portia from 2013.
You guys already know this. First of note, rom-coms are absolutely one of my least favorite genres, except for maybe comedies or romance films. Also, interesting fact, this is Daniel Levy's first feature film. And for those of you who don't know, he's from Canada.
It's on Schitt's Creek, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Schitt's Creek.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's his first appearance in a film. So, I had to bring that up as a fellow Canadian. I also found it funny that Tina Fey is partnered with Michael Sheen, who they also have a bit of a weird anti-romantic relationship in 30 Rock together. All that being said, this film is about Tina Fey, who is someone involved with admissions at a university named Princeton, which I guess is some kind of important university in the U.S., I'm guessing. Obviously not really that important because, it's not Yale, right? So, I guess this means it's like a second-class university, maybe. And she's vying for her boss's job, who's very dedicated to her position, which takes her to Paul Rudd School, where all the quote-unquote preconceived romance starts with possibly the sexiest ever shot on a film. But really, it's a ploy to tell Tina Fey her child she put up for adoption may be this kid that Paul Rudd knows. This is some amazing secondary cast in this who also are some of the funniest people in history of film, who are all absolutely wasted in this film. It's chock full of funny people, but this movie is not funny. And the story is a typical fish out of water, where Tina Fey's character doesn't do well with kids or possibly anyone. There's good character development for all the characters. The story at times is messy, and for the most part, the two love interests are both working through their midlife crises, and maybe that's where the love happens, I guess. The story hummed along all right, but falls apart in the back end of the story, where everything falls apart for Tina in a way that seems not even real for the story they're telling. Rom-coms are normally awful. This was less awful because it had Paul Rudd in it, and who doesn't love Paul Rudd? And also Tina Fey, who's one of the loves of my life. So, yeah, I didn't completely hate this movie, but it's not great.
I didn't rewatch it for this, Jim, but what I do remember from watching on the Michael Sheen episode is how little I enjoyed Michael Sheen's character. And I love Michael Sheen. He's one of my favorite actors. I think he can do anything.
Oh, yeah.
And it was such a disappointing character for him to play. So that was my takeaway.
But what I did like about this movie was the character development. I think they did do really good character development. I just think the movie was not great.
All the audience and critics agreed with you, because I think it's a 37-32 split. So it's not particularly liked by really anybody.
There you go.
I don't mind it.
What did you like about it?
This falls in the category of movie that like I just kind of enjoy because I like the people that are in it. I don't really care too much of what's happening. Watching this movie for high art,
Harmless for you.
it's just like, oh, I like Tina Fey, I like Paul Rudd.
Right.
They're like charming. So let's, watch this on a rainy day or whatever. Like, I don't really care. I wouldn't use it as a pillar to defend the romantic comedy. You're not wrong in your assessment. And if that sounds like a good time, then you'll enjoy it.
All right, so the next couple of years here, first and foremost, she has a small role in Muppets Most Wanted, alongside Danny Trejo, Christoph Waltz, Chloe Grace Moretz, Stanley Tucci. On the Arquette episode, we talked about his connections, the Muppet verse, and we see Tina Fey doing the same thing here. She plays Nadya, like a Russian guard in the prison in the film. One of many.
Can't go wrong with Muppets.
Oh, no. I mean, pop culture sensation. This Is Where I Leave You is a film we talked about in the Adam Driver episode. She plays Wendy, one of the kids. It's definitely a dramatic role. It's a little bit of a departure. It's not very funny from her. I know the film itself isn't necessarily loved. I like her in it. It's just, I probably like This Is Where I Leave You more than the average person because of some of the character things that are going on there. But I think people wanted a bunch of comedic actors to be funny, and that's not really what it is.
Yeah.
Anybody else watch Monkey Kingdom on Disney Plus? Dude, Monkey Kingdom's awesome.
Yeah, it's totally awesome.
It caught me off guard. I just threw it on in the background of one night, just like whatever, and I was locked in. And Tina Fey's the only voice you get the entire film. She narrates the entire thing.
Yeah.
And I got so amped up about these macaques and their ridiculous culture of gatekeeping and how toxic it was from a hierarchy standpoint. I got invested in it. I talked to Christina about it. I was like, I just finished Monkey Kingdom. I have thoughts. And Tina Fey takes you through the whole damn thing. I was so impressed, guys. I'm telling you.
I thought her voice did well too.
It did.
She has that mom voice. I think that's why she does so well as a voice actor too.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you want to plug her in as the mom?
Mm-hmm.
And those monkeys are so much like us humans. It's crazy. It's kind of holy crap.
Well, and the story they tell is about one of these females, a young mom, at the bottom of the totem pole in this monkey kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's speaking as a mom, talking through that experience and what it's like to have a single dad who takes off. You have the kid. It was just a very relatable human experience through these monkeys. And I thought it was fascinating how much I cared by the end. And I think a lot of it is actually due to Tina Fey.
Yeah, for sure.
2015, we go back to the Amy Poehler and Tina Fey concoction, and Sisters. She plays Kate, produces the film alongside Maya Rudolph.
Do not like this one.
No, not the biggest fan of Sisters.
No, I started rewatching it before this, knowing that I wasn't going to finish it because I didn't remember a single thing about this. I don't like this movie very much. I don't even know really what the idea is here. What was the elevator pitch?
Make John Cena a drug dealer. That's what they want to do.
Which even that, I mean, maybe the payoff in the second half of the movie is better, but his introduction is not great. There's parts of it that are funny because those two are funny together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people in it that are funny. So the movie's, it's hard to make it unfunny. It's the flimsiest of plots. The setup is just really poor. And I don't like the roles being reversed. I think Amy Poehler does a better job of doing both than Tina Fey does, because Tina Fey being the kind of reckless one works so much less for me.
I agree. I kind of put this with Wine Country. They're two movies that they did together that I just don't think really hit with audiences very well. It's kind of disappointing because she doesn't have a ton of films, but I maybe fairly or unfairly love them together.
Can I tell you a similarity between those two?
They lost a lot of money.
She was not the writer of either of them.
Oh, that's a good note.
That makes sense, though.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Can you remember of her list of films where she is the writer where you've hated the film?
No.
Yeah, because this Sisters is written by Paula Pell.
Mm-hmm.
Who is well renowned in the comedy space. I mean, people love Paula Pell, but it's not Tina Fey.
Mm-hmm.
This felt more half-baked, though, because it felt more like, all right, we got those two, so we'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And it's well, you still need a premise. I still need a reason to be watching the thing I'm watching.
They just have it. They're just throwing a party at their old childhood home. And it's like, I don't really care that much.
At all. Don't care at all.
Your parents are probably doing the wise thing and selling this damn thing so they can move into their retirement home and live peacefully. You two have been distant. What do you want? They're going to sell the house. Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, a movie, like a big producing movie of hers. I know a one that she also was the main writer on, I believe was the main writer on, and played a character, 7 episodes herself, but between 2015 and 2017.
This was featured in a reference on Billy on the Street.
Yeah, she created the show.
Did you guys see that episode of Billy on the Street?
I've seen them all, but because of how his humor is, it's almost impossible for me to recall any specific joke if it's not like the top 5 that I remember.
They were trying to find friends for Tina Fey. So they were running up to people, sticking microphones in front of people's faces and saying, "Will you be friends with Tina Fey?" And of course, everybody's like, "Oh yeah." They asked her, "What do you like better, such and such movie that had nothing to do with Tina Fey, or Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt?" And the lady said the other one, and they're like, "No, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt is hers." And then they ran away from that person. It was really funny.
I feel like we would be remiss though. Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt hit hard when it was released.
It did. It did.
Oh, it was great.
Like it was huge.
I think it got a couple Emmy noms.
Ellie Kemper, that was a huge vehicle for her.
It's funny. It's a funny show.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, this is one of her highest rated critic vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
This was during that Netflix boom too, where like it seemed like everything they were putting out was fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I watched the whole series. I loved it. I thought it was great.
High praise. And then Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, which I think we mentioned earlier. She played Kim, lost a lot of money. Margot Robbie's in that. She gets sent over to Afghanistan because she's childless and not married, and they need somebody to go over and do the coverage. And the premise is, hey, honey, the guy I'm dating, I'll be home in 3 months. And she's there a long time. And they're all a hot-ass mess.
Doing like sketchy journalism? Trying to blow. This movie's weird.
She wasn't doing sketchy journalism.
It was a part of the culture that she was in, though.
Yeah.
This movie has a lot of people in it. Like Christopher Abbott's in this movie, Sterling K. Brown's in this movie, Molina's in this movie, like
yes,
Cousin Greg is in this movie. Tonally, it's weird.
It is.
And that's what kind of messed me up.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was here for it, but tonally, it couldn't figure out what it wanted to be. It ends up not working. It's not terrible, but you can never fully give yourself over to it. You just feel kind of like, ugh. I watched that, I guess, but I don't really know what to say about it.
It feels kind of icky because you look at like Christopher Abbott, he's not of Middle Eastern descent. Alfred Molina looks like he might be, and he's not. And they're playing very particular characters, and I'm like,
oh, dude, Molina's on the all race team. If you look at his career, he's played fucking everything under the sun.
It's true though. Feel about Thornton.
That's one of my biggest complaints in film in general. When they miscast people as the wrong culture, it's just there's so many amazing actors around the world.
They do it twice.
There's no need for it anymore. Like there's just no need for it anymore.
It's not like this movie came out in like 74 where like, there's 12 actors total. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 12 Asian actors in all of Hollywood.
8 years ago.
Yeah. It's
the one line I did laugh at is on the front end when she first gets there and meets Nicholas Braun's character, and they introduce him as Tall Brian, and she's like, "Why don't you just call you Brian?" And he like casually drops that Short Brian's dead.
Yeah.
At the end of it, and she goes, "Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Sorry about that. Now I get it."
I was just gonna say, after watching it the second time, because I saw it when it came out in cinemas, and then we watched it for the show, I felt like the subtext to this could have been "Eat, Pray, Love, Play, War." That's how I felt after it. And mix of comedy with the message they were bringing was just,
yeah.
To Aubrey's point, it's just the tone is just not right for the whole film. I liked it more when I saw it first. Rewatching it, I was like, ugh, I did not like it.
I had the opposite effect of you. So when this movie came out, it was marketed as like comedy taking place in war. I mean, the title is Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, WTF. It's being sold to us as a comedy with war. And when I watched it for this episode, I feel like if it had been flipped, or if it would have been a war movie with comedy, I think everything would have maybe fallen into place a little bit easier. I was excited to see this movie when it came out. I was caught off guard in the theater when it wasn't just a full-on comedy that I was expecting to see. But I loved Tina Fey, so I did enjoy the movie. But the second time watching it, I think I was just in a different place. I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch a war movie that's got some funny lines in it.
If they would have just thrown Charlie Sheen in this, it could have been Hot Shots Part Trois.
Patois.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hate it.
Like the muddled tone muddies the themes, which unfortunately for me kind of steps on what is not a bad performance by Tina Fey.
No.
Mm-hmm.
This could have been a good vehicle for her to show off a little bit more. The final 30 minutes, when you get the big dramatic payoffs, you don't get that in this.
Mm-hmm.
So you never get to see her go there. And it's disappointing because she does a good job in the rest of the movie. She's my favorite performance, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, bar the complicated and controversial Christopher Abbott, but I just like him in everything. Like, I don't really know what Margot Robbie's doing in this movie.
No.
Having sex, baby.
Honestly, this is probably the worst I've seen her.
She's fucking the security team. That's what she's doing in this film. And she asked for permission, and consent is important.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
It is a strange character.
But you guys know me. I love real life characters. So besides her portrayal as Liz Lemon, who was basically Tina Fey, this is the second role in her career where she's playing a real life person. I guess maybe Nadya from Muppets Most Wanted. I don't know.
I don't think it qualifies, unfortunately. Loosely based on a real character that existed once upon a time. A show that I know James is a big fan of, Modern Love. She was in 2 episodes. I remember she was in the episode with John Slattery that we talked about in the Slattery episode.
Modern Love it's like an anthology, right? Each episode its own story. They try to tie it together at the end and it does not work, but it's based off of actual New York Times columns about the different ways that people love kind of in our contemporary world. So it's not necessarily like only couples. One of the stories is about a woman and her doorman. They don't have a relationship, but they have a relationship. And by far the best episode of the entire show is Tina Fey's episode with John Slattery. It's based on a column written by Dennis Leary's wife, which is interesting. So essentially Slattery's playing like Dennis Leary's character in the story. He's a moderately successful actor, like enough to have a nice place, enough to pay for their kids to go to college, and enough to get recognized sometimes, like when they go out, but nothing crazy. And their kids are leaving for college, and they're realizing that while they're great co-parents, they haven't dated in a while. And it's like a really nuanced, kind of dramatic relationship story. And I was incredibly impressed when I watched it for Slattery. And it also has to do with the performance of Tina Fey. I thought she was great in this. She plays a wife who's like always at arm's length, and she wishes she was more involved in her husband's kind of celebrity. And the reason why she's not more involved in her husband's celebrity is because her husband hates being a celebrity. He likes acting, but he's like, I don't invite you to those celebrity parties because you and I both fucking hate celebrity parties, and you don't like any of the people there, and I don't like any of the people there. I go there because it's work. And she takes it as a slight. She's like, do you just not want your non-famous wife to be on your arm? And it's like incredibly in-depth and nuanced. And I was impressed. It's by far the best kind of portrayal of anyone who's been in a long-term relationship in which you have to take time to, care and nurture a relationship. And you can't just kind of go through the motions. And I wish she did more roles like this because obviously, it speaks kind of to her truth. She's been married for a long time and they have kids. But it was impressive because it's not a comedic role. And obviously, she's a superstar when it comes to writing comedy. And I was impressed when she kind of plays more of the housewife role here, which was refreshing.
That's high praise.
Very.
The show itself can be it's people's writing about love stories, right? So it's like some of these could be a little corny for sure. But I will say the one that stands out the most is this episode. So if you are going to check one out, check out hers.
I watched it for this. I was going to start the series back when it came out, and I was just like, But watched it for this. I would agree with everything you said. Watching this makes me want to go watch other episodes of it. So,
unfortunately, this is definitely the pinnacle. I think there needs to be a little bit more of a kind of dry or maybe a little bit more darkish humor to make the love seem a little more realistic. And a lot of them just focus on the, the euphoric side of it, which isn't always realistic.
You guys really threw me for a loop because I thought this was referencing Modern Family. So to hear this discussion where I was expecting to hear Modern Family appearance is enlightening.
Different kind of love.
I was all in on this early because I'm a John Carney guy. I really like his movies. They kind of skew a little bit more optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I like that criticism of some of the episodes is dead on. So you kind of got to be willing to be okay with that space for more of them to work. I think this one is amazing. She's amazing. John Slattery's great, but she really stands out to me in this. I think also just the subtle, like, the play on the tennis thing is really clever. Because like the idea of a relationship, the way they play tennis at first, it was super competitive. They're trying to like outdo each other, so it doesn't work. But then you play this tennis where you're playing together. That's really clever. While there's a lot said, there's more that's unsaid between the two of them, which really shows the strength in both performances. This is a must watch, and it's a very easy one to watch.
Well, let's get into highest critic score. And Aubrey's going to talk about the Disney Pixar film Soul. She plays 22 from 2020.
I was excited to get this movie again because I was excited to watch it again because most of what I remember about this movie were the circumstances surrounding the movie. I think this was the first Disney Plus movie that they released simultaneously, or this was one of the movies that they released straight to Disney Plus.
Yep.
It wasn't released in theaters. I remember watching this around that Christmas time release with my family and my very, very, very small son. Let's just get the basics out of the way. It's a Pixar movie from 2020. It's on the trend of making something real that is like an emotion or a feeling. And so Joe is like a middle-aged teacher or a middle school teacher whose life is like most teachers' lives. It hasn't gone exactly the way that he thought it was going to go when he was younger. So he's passionate as jazz. He loves jazz, and he's always wanted to be a jazz musician, but he finds himself teaching middle school kids music. His life just isn't where he wants it to be. So you can kind of see the sadness in him because it's a relatable feeling at that age. And then he finds himself, how do I put this? This isn't a Pixar movie. He dies, and he doesn't really know. And so he finds himself in like a separate world, and he's trying to get back to Earth. And in that, he ends up having to be a mentor to a smaller person or thing that will go to Earth and then become a person. So he has to mentor this person to teach them the ways of the world or what it means to be a person and like all that kind of stuff. And through this, he finds out like what the real point of life is and what it means to have a soul, which is where you get the title from. Jamie Foxx is the main person, Joe. Tina Fey plays 22. There's, pretty interesting cast around this. I remember watching this movie the first time and thinking that it was good, kind of going about my business.
Oh, no.
I was blown away watching it this time. This movie does some things and goes some places that I find to be very, very interesting. The biggest knock is that it's not really for kids in any real way. In any way that like a Pixar movie is supposed to be for kids, it's not. There's not even like really like the cute sellable thing, which is probably why you don't see much Soul merch anywhere in the Disney universe. There's not a ton of like simplistic jokes. Like I'm watching this and I'm just like, would my 4.5-year-old son watch this movie? And I'm sure he'd watch it, but I'm not sure it would hold his attention for very long. And I don't even take that as a negative, though. Like, I don't care. I still think this movie's brilliant because what it captures in this is for, I think, older kids. I think it's for like teenagers, preteens, and adults, because this movie really highlights what it's like to be a person, the real life human struggles of like, what is the point of us doing what we do? What does the passion that I have mean? why do any of these things matter? The idea that like we get so caught up, you know, the way I kind of put it earlier when I was talking to like my wife about this was when we're kids, you dream about all these things and it's great. And when you get older, you start to try to achieve those dreams and you get so caught up in pursuing the dream because of the way that we're taught to pursue them, you lose the humanity of why we're living anyways in that pursuit. And so this movie is very much stop and just enjoy what this world has to offer. It's a powerful message, and maybe I'm just exposing what I need to hear in my own personal life, but I found this movie to be profound in a way that like I will revisit multiple times. This is a movie that I think everyone should watch, and if caught at the right time, will affect them deeply. It's a beautiful movie. Tina Fey of it is interesting because while she's a great voice actor, they either tailored the character around her or they casted her specifically for this character because the character is very like sarcastic and kind of distant and like points out why a lot of the things that they have to do are stupid, which fits Tina Fey's delivery very well. I found her voice work to be inconsequential to what was really happening. It's not bad in any way, but it doesn't stand out. It's not memorable. But Jamie Foxx really kind of steals the show from the voice acting perspective here.
When this movie came out, I was absolutely blown away. And by the end of the year,
Remember that?
I ranked my movies from that year, and this was number one. My one critique, very similar to yours. I don't think it's a kids' movie.
Mm-mm.
I think you're right. I think it's for older kids. I think the message will be lost on younger kids, but it was not lost on me. That's for sure. When I watched this, I was like, damn, this is a beautifully animated movie specifically made for my ass. I was like, oh my God, you gotta readjust and kind of think some life lessons after watching this. And that is not necessarily something that, you know, maybe an 8-year-old is gonna fully comprehend.
So gutted me like 3 or 4 times. The barbershop scene was gutting, but the end when he plays the set and he's in the zone and he does all the things and it goes amazing and he walks out and he's just like, so what's next? And she's like, we come back tomorrow. And he's like, oh, it's gutting to see that and realize that like you can pursue something so aggressively, which is not a negative. It's not a bad thing that he wanted to be a jazz musician so bad and he pursued it with all his heart and that's what he thought his life was. That's not a bad thing. And for him to get it and realize that he had spent his entire life not living in pursuit of this thing is gutting.
Heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, as they get to midlife crisis, go through that whole process, right? It's like,
Yep.
what the hell was I doing for half my life now? And I haven't gained anything, right? So yeah, it's really
To
pretty
accomplish a single goal and then find out when you get there, it's like doesn't bring you the joy you once thought it would.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh,
I thought everything would be better once I did this, and it's not. And why is that?
a meaningful connection and meaning.
It's particularly unique in this because I remember all the midlife crisis, episodes of like Family Matters and shit like that when I was growing up, and I was just like, I've seen this stuff and I get it, but like this was a crisis of the pursuit of the thing that I was always taught to do. I was always taught to pursue the thing that your passions wholeheartedly, and to realize that without any of the things along that journey, you can lose that if you're not careful. It's why like the best love stories or the best romance movies to me are the ones that highlight like how you can lose everything that you want or you gained by just not being careful. It seems like that's what it was happening with Joe, at least to some extent, is he lost his own he lost his human experience in pursuit of this thing. And then he gets it, and that's what he realized that he lost. It's just like, I stopped enjoying pizza, and I stopped enjoying like sunsets and the beauty of what this world has. And that's like a crazy thing to have to come to terms with, especially if you're like 9.
That's why you're probably hitting you so hard too, right? Like you said, you watched Family Matters as a young person. Maybe you need to be middle-aged to really get the full effect of this movie, right?
2021, she makes a cameo in Free Guy as vacuuming mom
With The Rock.
with The Rock and many other humans, many, many others. And then she played Cinda in Only Murders in the Building between 2021 and 2023, 9 episodes there. A very popular show, speaking of Martin Short and Steve Martin.
Yeah, there was 2 projects that I wanted to watch that I didn't get to catch. That was this one and another one coming up. But I've heard nothing but great things about this show.
It's awesome. I've been watching it from the first season. So good.
I mean, is it a comedy? Is it a mystery? What's going on in this?
Both.
Yes, it is that.
Okay.
It's basically these people that live in a building, and it's kind of like was more popular, I guess, more established place in New York City. And Martin Short's character is a playwright that he hasn't done any work in a long time, and Steve Martin is an actor who hasn't done a lot of stuff in a long time. And then Selena Gomez's character is this young person that they kind of fall in, and then basically someone dies in their building in the first season, and then they're trying to solve the mystery because they're all into true crime. So they create a podcast.
Oh, okay.
And then actually Tina Fey's character is, I'm not even say a rival podcaster, but she's like hit the big time. She's got all the followers, and she's a bit of an evil overlord type person. She plays it really well. It's just a really fun, because all the character actors they bring in it are fantastic. All the other people in the building, and
Oh yeah.
just it's so well written and so fun.
Well, let's go to our last review. And I'll keep this one pretty short, not because I necessarily want to, because I don't know if there's much to talk about, to be completely honest. But largest audience gap is a movie called Maggie Moore's, parentheses S there, and she plays a character named Rita. And this picture was directed by John Slattery, just to kind of connect the dots from earlier in the Munson verse. It's got a 64-51 split on Rotten Tomatoes, so not a huge gap, but audiences generally seem to enjoy it. The film is carried by 2 stars, John Hamm, who plays Jordan, the detective at the center of the story, and then Tina Fey, who plays Rita, the nosy neighbor who helps with the investigation. So on the true crime side. 2 women named Maggie Moore are both murdered, and you're unraveling everything with that. So Hamm attempts to unravel the mystery. It's a bizarre plot with child porn, a deaf hitman, and moldy cheese.
That's a hell of a tagline you just put out there.
I mean, am I wrong on that one? I just tried to pick the 3 most bizarre element of the plot there.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know. For me, it wasn't fantastic. I didn't find Tina Fey added much to the character. Like,
No.
it's kind of like, yeah, whatever. I didn't hate it, but I was kind of bored watching it for most part.
Yeah, no, seriously. After the first act, I kind of went on autopilot, because the rest of it was just pretty unremarkable and uninteresting. She plays like a role that is hopelessly lonely. She desperately wants friendship and connection because all of her friends after her divorce allied with her ex-husband. And so, one of those couples who all their friends are the couples, and they get divorced, but all the couples go with the husband. So she's just kind of like doing her own thing. And her and John Hamm cozy up to each other. And her character is like super sincere. It speaks to some of her dramatic acting abilities, but the movie just has these 2 contrasting tones between a love story and a guy covering up a double murder plot. And it takes a while to get going, and it's just kind of boring, to be completely honest.
She does a lot with John Hamm.
Yeah, well, he's usually good. But Happy Anderson was amazing in this. Like, he was the best thing about this movie. He's like one of the main killers.
It's so unremarkable. I watched it 5 days ago, and I can't even remember.
Well, it wasn't very memorable. The movie wasn't, but he was. He's got a beard, and he's a big grizzled guy.
Oh, the big guy, yeah, with the hearing issues.
He's great in this.
Wow, why do you think the audience liked it?
Maybe because they were bored. I don't know. Because of the way the Rotten Tomato scale works, right? You either like it or you don't. That kind of frames the scoring. It's not like an IMDb where you're giving it a 1 out of 10 scale.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why it's in the 60s, because it's likable in some ways and it's harmless.
Yeah.
I could see people being like, yeah, it's fine. and never telling anybody about it again.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of quirkiness to it, so maybe that was kind of it. It's like it's trying to be more creative than it is, I think.
Mm-hmm. So there are other things I would point them to for Tina Fey.
I agree.
So rounding it out, last couple roles we'll mention A Haunting in Venice, 2023.
This was the one I wanted to watch and I didn't get around to because it sounds like she's playing a completely different role.
It is. And
Yeah.
It
it's
is.
horrible. Like, this movie is unwatchable.
Oh, really?
I disagree.
She's miscast in this. This is a terrible movie. Just horrible.
Ooh.
It's so transparent, you know. But all of these movies about him and his terrible French accent, it's just like, ugh, I hated all of them. They're all terrible.
I hard disagree on this movie, but I don't entirely disagree with the Tina Fey of it. And part of it is I like the Poirot stories because I just like those stories. I like him. I've read, some Agatha Christie books. I enjoy it. So, Orient Express is fine. I enjoy that movie. Death on the Nile I enjoy less, but I still will watch it. This movie kind of surprised me because I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed both of those other ones. You could have told me that Tina Fey wasn't in this movie and I would completely be like, oh yeah, she wasn't in this.
Okay.
So whether or not she was good or not, I can't tell you. I find the movie to be interesting. I'm not going to sit here and fight tooth and nail to defend it. It's not one of those. But I enjoyed it. I think it's fun.
Play the writer case.
Okay.
Who pulls in Poirot.
It's different.
She claims that she, helped make him who he was as a writer, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Sherlock Holmes situation where she's Watson trying to help solve the mystery in Lifetime.
And it's a different role for her, but she doesn't fit it, in my opinion. I'm anxious to see what you think of it, Case, when you see it.
Based on this conversation, I'm probably not going to watch it. So we'll just.
No, you should watch it.
Yes.
You should watch it.
Don't watch it.
I like it. I think it's fine. I'm in the middle.
So now I've learned where my opinion stands with Case.
When you said you don't really remember her in it, like she's not the center of it for me, I don't know that I'm all that interested.
What I'm hearing is your opinion doesn't matter as much, Aubrey. That's what I heard.
I have a hard disagreement with Aubrey's last statement.
I'd rather this not be the movie you do that with.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's keep it moving.
Mean Girls reprised on screen, this time as a musical, because it was also a musical for a little bit. She reprised the role, screenwriter, producer, slightly different interpretation on it, new actors, but cool to see 20 years later they bring it back in a slightly different format.
I must admit, this was my VR experience for this episode. Was the Mean Girls reprise. Musicals are equally on my list of things I don't enjoy with rom-coms, but I enjoyed the retelling of this story because I felt like they kept a lot of the important things. I thought they updated some relevant things. And I just thought it was a creative approach to making some of the points in a different way. As much as I'm going to enjoy a musical comedy, I enjoyed my rewatch of this. Plus, it was in VR, so I always enjoy that.
I like this less than the original.
Yes.
And I like musicals.
Oh.
I am a person who will watch movies again, even bad movies. I will never watch this movie again.
I'm not going to watch Mean Girls again, so I get that.
It's the same story. I don't think they needed it to be done.
Needless sequel.
New generation, maybe. Yeah,
I guess.
maybe.
Just re-release the original. They just go, who's Lindsay Lohan, and you watch the original. Remakes don't ever need to be made, ever. I've never seen a remake that's better than the original.
Well, before we get to top performances, I thought I'd note that in her career, she's won 9 Primetime Emmys, 3 Golden Globes, 5 SAG Awards, 7 Writers Guild Awards, and 3 Producer Guild Awards.
Not too shabby.
As we talked about, but she's won a lot of awards. She hasn't won an Oscar, but she's done a lot.
She's working her way towards the EGOT. She's an EGOT candidate.
Well, she was nominated for a Grammy and a Tony, so
Yep.
she's pretty well decorated on the award side. All right, Case, we reached the top of the mountain. What do we got for top performances?
The list I found was from movieweb.com, and it's titled Tina Fey's Best Performances, Ranked. So this is 1 through 10, January 2024, obviously TV and movies. we talked in depth pretty much about everything but one of these projects.
Date night.
Date night.
Date night is number 9.
Are they going to put Soul in there?
It's after, isn't it?
Soul is number 2.
30 Rock.
30 Rock is number 1.
Good list.
Yeah, I was going to say this list so far is impressive.
All right, Mean Girls.
Gotta be.
Mean Girls is number 3.
Ah, love this list.
Baby Mama.
Baby Mama is not on the list.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
This Is Where I Leave You. Did it make the list?
This Is Where I Leave You is not on the list.
Good Whiskey Foxtrot.
What the fuck?
WTF is not on the list.
A Modern Love.
Modern Love is not on the list.
We're striking out so hard right now.
Only Murders in the Building.
Only Murders in the Building is number 6. So one of these items, it's an obvious softball, but there's a caveat to her participation in this project.
SNL.
Yeah, Saturday Night Live, but specifically what character?
Sarah Palin?
Ellen.
Sarah Palin.
Saturday Night Live as Sarah Palin is number 5. So we're missing number 4, number 7, number 8, and number 10.
Did Monkey Kingdom make the list?
Monkey Kingdom is not on the list.
That's bullshit. Or Stookie.
But Kimmy Schmidt. Is Kimmy
Yeah,
Schmidt
it's
on there?
Kimmy Schmidt's
Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt is number 10.
Is Ponyo on there?
Hanyo is number 8.
Okay. Voice roll.
Good shout.
Just rewatched Ponyo. It was fantastic.
A Haunting in Venice.
A Haunting in Venice is number 7.
Ugh.
Indicated. Love it. Good for her.
There's no way we're going to get this one, so I will just tell you this. And I saw a couple clips, and her stopping Kermit the Frog from escaping
Muppets Most Wanted.
in Muppets Most Wanted made the list at number 4.
Well done.
The first 3 were so good, and then Muppets
Yes.
number 4.
What are you talking about? She was awesome in Muppets.
I mean, she was good. I don't know what that says about your resume if a Muppet performance is top 5.
There weren't a lot of great lists out there for her performances, which kind of surprised me.
Thanks, Case.
Yeah, man.
All right, let's get into the Munson Meter. What we do, we rate every actor on a scale of 0 to 100 based on a variety of factors. Could include anything from longevity, project choice, pop culture impact, their acting range, their awards footprint, any other talents they might have, their personal life, their comedic chops, box office success, or anything else that matters to us as Munsons. I had the honor of going first this time. Hopefully I'll get us going in a positive direction, but I'll say I really, really like Tina Fey. I think she has an incredible comedic career working alongside folks like Amy Poehler. I think she's a really talented writer, and all the awards that she's gotten over the years shows that. I love the point that Aubrey made about her being just a point guard for other people on set or behind the scenes. And being a woman asked to repeatedly co-host award shows, I think is a big deal because that's not a game that's really built for women, at least not even today. And the fact that her and Amy continue to get the call back says a lot in writing a lot of those jokes. She seems like a very incredibly well-adjusted human with a very stable marriage and a family life and has no controversy, does really lovely things off the screen to help with charities. Loves Halloween, like I mentioned. That's a big... She's got the weirdest collection of Halloween items and trinkets, and I love that about her because that's my personality. And honestly, and I threw it out there, Jim and I talked about Monkey Kingdom caught me completely off guard, and it just showed a different type of skill set that I think she can bring from a voice narration standpoint. She was a huge part of that. The big thing where she's going to take a hit is acting range on my scale, and that that plays a lot of points in mine. But outside of that, I think she's incredible. And I'm going to give her what I think is a pretty darn good score. I'm going to give her 79. I think it's pretty damn high. All right, James.
I agree with everything you said. I'll say, she's known for her deadpan humor and delivery. She's really good at self-deprecating humor, playing off the like classic career businesswoman trope, unmarried, even though that's not true in her case. But, the later in life mom, I think she's great at that. I don't think there is range. I think she's a world-class writer, and she has the accolades to prove it. And I think where she's at her best is where she's playing some version of herself, whether that be in funny or even dramatic roles. It is something that's not too much of a stretch for her. So I was trying to figure out ways in which I can give her a score. And so I wrote them down. We're going to add them all up together. Mean Girls is a classic in my eyes. I'm going to give her 5 points for that. Soul was my favorite movie of that year, 5 for being in that. 30 Rock has top 10 most nominations, Emmy nominations ever. Going to get 5 points for that. 5 points for being the first female writer of SNL and the youngest winner of the Mark Twain Prize for Humor. So we're at 20 total. I'm going to give her 1 point for each Emmy nomination she's received. So that's 45 Emmy nominations. So we're going to be at 65. And then I'm going to -2 for her role in The Invention of Lying. And so I'm going to give her a 63.
That was very scientific.
Yeah, there is a lot of science going on there. It's like that's way too much math for my liking.
I'm going to be honest, James, I'm trusting your math an awful lot. I didn't do the adding with you.
At some point, I liked The Invention of Lying, so my math should not be trusted. Just trust me.
For me, I mean, I love Tina Fey. I've always loved her, but I have to go a little bit with Kyle a little bit because I'm like, I think she hasn't got the range that she should have at this stage in her career. Like, she's not pulling out chops for it. Do I think that she adds to a movie? Yes, I do. I'd like to see her more in those comedy roles that she can shine in. I think she's trying to branch out. I just don't think she has the skill level for it. It's actually going to bring her down a little bit on my point scale. Like I've said, 30 Rock is my favorite TV show that has ever been made. She gets a huge props for that. I'm going to go in at about 74 for her.
All right, Aubrey.
So I agree with a lot of what's been said. Tina Fey is a really difficult one for me to do because I don't do a ton of the extra stuff. It's really just about like, how good of an actor are you? And, she's a comedic legend, but that appears to be more of writing than it is like the work she's doing on the screen. She has memorable characters. Liz Lemon and what she does in 30 Rock is a big deal. But the acting, I don't see a ton of it there. She does do good comedic work, and good comedic work is really hard to do. We talked about this with the Will Ferrell episode, and any other time we talk about a comedian, they don't get enough credit. And so she does do very well in that field, which deserves a lot of credit, but there is no range. So when you're looking from the other side, the only real thing I have to kind of hold on to is Modern Love, which I think is brilliant, but is very, very small in sample size. So it's tricky. I'm somewhere in between where everybody's at. I'm going to go 75.
Case, round us out.
You guys have made some of the big points. Brilliant writer. We talked about her chemistry. She's got an impeccable reputation. 30 Rock is a project that I would put up against any other project anybody else we've looked at. And I don't think that show works without her. From a nomination standpoint, she's 3/4 of the way to an EGOT. That's pretty cool. When I was growing up and I was a fan of early Saturday Night Live, the adults in my life loved the Martin Short, Steve Martin comedy team. And to me, Amy Poehler and Tina Fey are that comedy team of my generation. And so I've enjoyed their work together. And I would disagree with you guys on the range because she grew up in Delaware County. The Delco accent is pronounced and it's hard to get away from. And so I think she's got better range than we're giving her credit. I come up with my scores the same way, probably a Tracy Morgan would come up with his scores. So there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to my scoring. So with all that being said, I want to give her an 80.
Thanks, Case, for joining me up at the top there. Wow. All right, with that gives Tina Fey a 74.2, which puts her in 49th place.
Ooh, okay.
That ties her with Deborah Winger in 49th place, just behind Chris Hemsworth and just in front of Christina Applegate.
That seems wrong.
Yeah, normally when we pair things together, I could yeah, that makes sense, but that's a weird trio right there.
Her and Deborah Winger at the same score. Two women of different eras.
Yeah.
Aubrey, what does she got coming?
Unfortunately, not much. There is one thing of note, really, because it's the only thing I think that's in production, which is a TV series called The Four Seasons. 3 suburban couples vacation together each season, but tensions arise when one couple splits up and the husband brings a much younger woman on subsequent trips. I find that premise to be really interesting. This also was written by her, and it stars her, Steve Carell, Will Forte, and the Man of the Year, Coleman Domingo. So,
Love Coleman.
yeah, I'm all in on this.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's pretty much it. There's a couple of other things that are in development or that are mentioned, but really that's the only thing that she's got that concrete that's coming, which is a little disappointing, but it kind of fits with how it goes with her.
It checks. Yeah.
She's not ultra prolific.
That shouldn't have to be.
Yeah.
Okay, well, next episode's going to hit on August 15th. We've got one of our return guests, Cam Sully from the Jacked Up Review Show podcast. He was with us for Julia Stiles, Kristen Shaw, Keith David, and Dennis Haysbert. And then he also suggested to bring in somebody that he knows, a guy out of DC in the DC Critic Circle named Anthony Francis, to help him as reinforcements.
Ooh, okay.
For this particular episode. So he felt like we wanted to bring somebody else in to assist. So with that in mind, the 5 actors we threw on the wheel for episode 105 were Sacha Baron Cohen, Anna Faris, Stephen Tobolowsky, J.B. Smoove, and Diane Keaton. What do we like or dislike about that list?
It was a strange 5.
Is Stephen Tobolowsky, is that the guy from Eastbound and Down?
I don't watch.
Oh, wait, no, that's Stevie Janowski.
No, that's Stephen Janowski.
My bad.
Fictional character.
I would definitely not want him then.
I feel 10 feet tall right now.
No bunting.
Who the fuck is this guy?
The main thing I think of with Tobolowsky is Groundhog Day. He's the tall, bald guy.
He's in a bunch of shit. But yeah, I'd say Groundhog Day is probably his most famous because he gets punched 1,000 times in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi Burning would be a fun watch, guys.
Willem Dafoe, Gene Hackman.
It's wild.
We'd laugh with J.B. Smoove. I mean, he's funny dude.
I can't think of any movie he's in. When I see J.B. Smoove, all I think of is Curb.
Surprisingly, I would not want to do Sacha Baron Cohen because I feel like it might start to feel very one note towards the end.
I agree. I had seen him in a dramatic role, something called Spy on Netflix, and I was really impressed. And then it's probably similar to what we just discussed, where I was like, damn, you should just do that more often, man.
Ricky Bobby?
Interesting.
He's a solid actor. His comedy stuff is just wackadoo, but he's solid dramatic actor.
Just got divorced, didn't he? He just got divorced to Isla Fisher, I believe.
Who's it? Attractive gal.
Mm-hmm.
Anna Faris's Scary Movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's my vote because I think Rigby will come back if we do that.
We already got an extra guest. And bring in Rigby too. We're gonna be overloaded.
Do it.
Diane Keaton's the obvious, award-winning one, right? If you want to watch the best movies, dramatic films, it's gonna be Diane Keaton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet Stephen Tobolowsky's better than we give him credit for. He looks like he's been in a bunch of funny stuff.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, that. He's good.
Who's Cam picking and wants to bring in another person?
I don't know. Cam's an absolute wild card.
Yeah. If he's bringing in a hired gun, I think he wants Diane Keaton.
I don't know.
No, I think it's going the other direction. It's either Anna Faris or Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah, I think I'm on Aubrey's side here. I think he's trying to pump up some scores for J.B. Smoove.
Jim, if you had to pick one, what are you coming in for if you're doing back-to-back?
I would probably pick Sacha Baron Cohen. Him and Hugo, he was brilliant in that.
Great movie.
He's got some acting chops, so.
Well, Jim doesn't decide. Cam doesn't decide. Anthony doesn't decide. And I don't decide, despite what Case tries to tell you. The wheel decides, and we'll see what happens. Jim, you're an absolute ride and an absolute pleasure, my friend. Thanks for being with us again and getting a little angry, bringing some of that brand over with us here. This is your end of the episode plug. You can either talk about what's going on in the podcast world, plug anything, or any wise words for our audience.
Mostly I like to plug butts, but when I'm not doing that, we are reviewing new films and cinema. You can catch us every Wednesday night late if you're a late nighter, because our podcast goes up before Bryce falls asleep. And you can pick us up on everywhere. Just go online and search FilmRage Podcast. After you see Nick Cage, you'll see us. So that's not a bad bottom to be under, for sure. Find us at FilmRage YYC and all the socials.
I love it, man. Love having you on, buddy.
Love being a Munson.
Always bringing the Canadian perspective, humbling us, keeping us level.
Yes.
As we wrap up, you can catch us on X, Munsons at Movies. You can catch us on Instagram, Munsons at the Movies. You can email us, munsonsatthemovies@gmail.com. Any final thoughts from Tina Fey?
Today's celebrity birthdays, none. Today's celebrity deaths.
All right, let's go. Thank you for the education, gentlemen. We've just received a PhD in stupidity. Doctor, shall we?
Now, Dick, let me get... Jack, it's on me. Wouldn't be a lemon party without old Dick.